Welcome, everybody. Thank you for joining us on a Tuesday afternoon for this week's How to Grow Your Business podcast. This week, we're going to actually be talking about a product and a strategy that's near and dear to my heart. Chris and I joke that it kind of takes me back to my roots in the long, long ago times before Henry was with JSA. And that's going to be annuities, how to use them to help grow your business, help protect your clients' investments, and most importantly, how to kind of diversify and how to protect ourselves from some crazy things that are happening in the Medicare space right now. I want to be clear about one thing today. This is kind of an annuities 101. This is not meant to immediately make you an annuities expert. This is supposed to give you, or our idea is to give you an introduction to the concept, kind of whet your appetite because there's going to be some more training coming down the path from JSA in this realm. But our idea is to get you excited about it, let you know what the opportunity is, and answer some questions you may have if this is something you've never worked with before. So, Chris, I know you've got some questions for me. I think the first one I'm assuming that we want to talk about, especially for folks that haven't really dealt with annuities before, is what is an annuity?
What is an annuity? I know it's a buzzword, and I know we've been talking about it a lot at JSA, and
So,
been doing
so
some
my
podcasts.
ask for you today, Chris, is as someone on my end who's been in the annuity space. I think the first policy I sold was a small $30,000 policy 17 years ago. So I've been around that space for a while. If I start using jargon or I start talking
Yep.
high level, I need someone to reach out. And Chris, I'm going to give that to you. Reach out and slap me. Say, hey, Henry, bring it down. So from that point of view, when I say what an annuity is simply a contract between an owner and an insurance company where they provide a lump sum or a stream of payments to an insurance company who then grows that amount of money at some prescribed way, shape, or form, whether it's a fixed rate of return over time or it's growing based on some other outside factor. And then it turns into an income stream down the road. So, like life insurance insures what happens if you pass away early. Think of annuities as an insurance of what happens if you live too long and you outlive your retirement savings. That's one of the best ways I like to look at it. And Chris, I had a bit of trivia, and I think I might have even stumped you. Maybe, maybe not.
You
Um,
did. You did.
So, question for any of the folks on here, and I'll see if I've got enough people here to just absolutely blow up the chat. Does anybody know how old annuities are and how far back in history they go and kind of one of the earliest recorded uses of annuities? Anybody?
I think this one's gonna be a stumper.
It's going to be a
Me.
stump.
You tossed me this
Somebody's
question.
checking Google right now. I know it.
Yeah, you tossed me this question the other day, and I was
Susan's
like, I had
right. So
no
it goes
idea.
all the way back to Egyptian times, and one of the common attributions as well is back to Roman times. Back then, what would happen is soldiers returning from war would provide a lump sum to the state, and in return for that, they would get a monthly stipend for the rest of your lives. Susan didn't even have to Google. Congrats, Susan! Thank you for being a history buff like me. And somebody else who's Googling, stop cheating. So that's how old these products are, and clearly they've evolved and changed over time. But what's kind of relevant now is how they kind of fit into what we're doing as agents. So I guess the next question we probably want to talk about is as agents, what's changed, what's kind of taken place in the last couple of years, the last 10 years to where we should even be talking about these. Chris, I know you're a student of the Medicare market right now, and I think we all are. Everybody that is on this call is kind of being impacted by some of the things going on. What are some of the things out there that you see that are kind of changing how Medicare agents have to do business?
Well, the writing's on the wall, and it's we've seen the writing for the past couple of years with all the changes that are happening, specifically with the Medicare Advantage and the Part D products. You see carriers going non-commissionable on a lot of their plans. I mean, raise your hand if you know a commissionable Part D plan. I'll wait. Yeah, no, it's the writing's been on the wall for a while that the Medicare landscape is changing and it's changing fast. We've had crazy AEPs over the past couple of years, and really what it comes down to is the growth in the Medicare space has been astronomical. I mean, we have over half of everyone on a Medicare Advantage plan right now. That conversation wouldn't have happened even 5 years ago. And the opportunity with the Medicare landscape, you could sell just Medicare plans, whether that be Medicare Supplements, Medicare Advantage, because the opportunity looked like this. That growth curve looked like this.
Yep.
Very high. Everything was raising really fast. We were doing a ton of business. But now that growth is kind of slowing down and we're seeing the market try to find its new normal. There's been a lot of pressure from just just overall Medicare spending to the cost of care, to the amount of people enrolled into these programs, to the reimbursements that are going to the carriers. I could spend an hour just talking about this, but ultimately what it comes down to is being an agent working in the Medicare space. The writing's on the wall. We can't just have all of our eggs in a Medicare basket, so to speak. And it's really time for us to diversify. And what that looks like from an independent agent standpoint is we have to diversify our portfolio and our services that we're providing to our clients. And annuities is definitely one of those opportunities that I think everybody on the phone call should 100% be exploring.
I think absolutely, and I think you mentioned a lot of the changes that are impacting the Medicare Advantage in the drug space. I had to laugh when CMS just recently here in the last day or so released their maximum commission levels. You saw that they raised the maximum commission level for PDPs.
Yep.
How relevant that is to anything right now with so many carriers, almost everybody going non-commissional to that space. It
Mhm.
almost kind of made me chuckle in a kind of a morbid way. But one of the things that I'd also add is it's not just the Medicare Advantage side that there's some concern with. So many more states are in the process of adding birthday rules, and that's kind of created some challenges for even med sup focused agents in the market. Uh, pick your state. I mean, Virginia, Maryland got hit especially hard, not just with the birthday rule, but with the legislation that was passed last year where everybody has to pay the same amount of commission. You'd think that'd be a good deal, but carriers are going to react like rational entities and they're going to say, well, we're just going to reduce compensation across the board in this particular state. So there's something to be said about diversifying, like you say, and offering additional products. But that's a great story for why we should be talking about it. But let's flip the script. Why are clients talking about it? What is it that's important about this for them? Where's the need there? And Chris, I know you've looked at the numbers. We've looked at this from a Medicare Advantage type perspective or a Medicare opportunity before. JSA for many years as the baby boomers kind of approach retirement. The tagline is there's a person turning 65 every 8 seconds. Well, as those individuals, those baby boomers reach retirement age, they have more needs than just their health insurance. What happens when someone turns 65 and separates employment from their job? Typically, they have a 401k or something to roll over. They've got investment plans that they have to use to now that's their income going forward. So it's not just that we need to offer these because of what's going on in the world for us. Clients have reasons that they may need these products as well. And the biggest three concerns that, and it's funny because this kind of speaks to how long the pre-baby boomer and the baby boom generation has kind of been in this transition out of the workforce. Again, I started in the annuity space late 2009, 2010 ish. This was a talking point even back then, the transfer of wealth or the transition of individuals out of employment and into retirement. We were just starting back then to see the early phases of the baby boom generation hitting this threshold. But over time, the concerns that they have relatively stayed consistent. And the biggest one has been concern about market risk. So what happened in 2008 and 2009 at the start of say my time in the annuity space that was it's fresh in people's memories. We had the Great Recession. Folks lost in market positions and in investment accounts 35%. Your clients are approaching retirement. Something that is typically on their minds is, well, what happens if that happens again? When you've got a longer time horizon, if you're going to continue working, that doesn't really make that much a difference.
Well, and there's even people now that are retiring that also went through the whole internet bubble of the early
Exactly.
2000s.
Yep.
Yeah, so
They
it's
got
it's
hit twice in a matter of just 8 or 9 years.
yeah, and it's still fresh in their mind as they're looking at retirement. Like, man, could I weather a storm that's going to happen again? Because you and I both know the stock market does two things, right? Stock market goes up and stock market goes down.
So it's interesting, and that's a very simple statement that I have used with clients in the past, but it's absolutely true. We know that the market goes up and we know that the market goes down. And the one thing we can't do is we can't control timing of the market. So if it goes down when we've got 5 years left before retirement, it might bounce back. If it goes down 6 months before I plan on retiring, is that going to make me change my plans? Am I potentially going to have to work longer to get that back? I don't know, but that's a scary thought to think of. The other thing that we see, and we saw a heck of a lot back then, and even still we see it, is the concept of lazy money. So conservative savers tend to want to put their money in places where they know it's not going to lose value. A lot of times that's a savings account or a money market account or CDs. What's the average money market account paying right now? Not a whole heck of a lot compared to some of the opportunities that are out there. So one of the easiest conversations that you can have is just talking to folks about what do they have sitting in interest bearing accounts that's just not performing. That's being lazy. And that's again, that's a word I'd say write that down, take it with you. The idea of lazy money. I'm going to have a in the follow-up email that we send out, a couple pieces of script and couple ideas, ways to kind of identify that money that's just sitting around and not performing. And like I mentioned before, one of the main goals that annuities can achieve, or one of the main needs that they serve, is providing some sort of lifetime income stream. And that addresses the fear that many people have about outliving their money. Folks have concerns about any sort of cuts in the future to Social Security. We see that all the time on the news. Is Social Security going to be able to continue to make payments the way it has? We see concerns about people living longer, healthcare costs increasing. At the end of the day, what's great about annuities is as they're providing a lifetime income stream, it's one of the few assets out there, one of the few tools out there that can provide that lifetime income stream on a guaranteed basis, knowing as long as you live, every month that check's going to continue to come in. That's appealing to a large number of retirees. So, Chris, this is where I'm going to have you keep me honest here. I want to talk about the type of annuities that JSA works with, and I'm going to talk about the type of annuities that we don't,
Hmm.
because I think it's important to clarify. So,
Yeah,
there's
I think we should just quickly talk about the annuities that we don't work with.
Yep. So the main type of annuities, the type of annuities we do not work with, flat out across the board. And some of you may be familiar with them. You may have them yourselves. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with them. Are variable annuities. These are the ones that you typically see being offered by a financial advisor who's securities licensed. Because at the end of the day, to offer a variable annuity, you do have to have a securities license, Series 7 type designation, and that's not something we're going to get involved with. The other main reason that's not a space that we're looking to play in is those annuities have the ability, just like the market, they can go up in value and they can go down. Typically, when somebody's in a retirement situation and they're conservative, they're looking for safety, that's something they're going to want to avoid, is something that has the ability to lose value. So that's something we're not going to work with. The two basic type of annuities that we work with, you're going to hear me call them, in some cases, multi-year guarantee annuities. But for today, we're going to talk them as just fixed annuities, vanilla, plain Jane. You put your money in for X amount of years. Each year, it's going to pay X amount in return. Sounds kind of like a CD, right, Chris?
Yeah, a lot like a CD, and that's kind of nice. So if you understand how a CD works, understanding how a fixed annuity works, it's almost along the same lines. But what a fixed annuity does is it gives you a little bit more guarantees and it gives you a little bit more advantage on the growth side.
Exactly. So as a CD pays out interest, that's going to be taxable every year. With the fixed annuity, you have the option of just having it keep that interest that it earns inside the annuity, and you don't pay tax on it. It's tax deferred, so you don't pay tax on that or those gains until you pull them out of the annuity at some future point.
Yep, it makes it a lot more stable too. And some of the guarantees right now that we're seeing on these fixed annuities, what's one of the best ones that you've seen out there?
So the one I really like right now is a carrier called Rebel One. They have a 5-year product that is paying 6%. And without getting too deep in the weeds, there's two riders that give you a little bit more options in terms of liquidity in case you need to access the money early. And that takes it down to 5.8, but still 5.8 fixed for 5 years. That's, as someone who's been in the business doing this for a while, I have flashbacks to 2012, 2013, when interest rates were so very low, where carriers would say, you know what, for the next 45 days, for any money that we bring in, our normal fixed rate is 2% for 5 years. We're going to pay a bonus. We're going to make that 2.25% fixed for 5 years, and it would get a ton of attention. So the idea of locking in money for 5 years right now at 5.8, it's very appealing to me, and it's a great option out there. So again, this is something that's going to be most appealing to your folks that are those conservative savers. For the folks that have lazy money sitting out there that's sitting in a checking account, not a checking account, a savings account or a money market account, or just parked in CDs that they don't really have any idea what they want to use it for. It's just there trying to get some conservative rate of return. If you could lock in growth for a few years with no market risk, is that something you'd want to see how it looks, or would you like to see how that looks? And you're going to find that, and I'll go out on a limb, and I'm assuming that some of the folks here on the call today have already been approached or had these type of conversations come up. And if you're already working with them, you've probably found some opportunity. If you're not working with annuities, you may have referred those off to folks and not necessarily gotten any sort of business out of it except maybe just a referral. But there's a lot of opportunity in that space, and fixed annuities are one of the, I'd say, the easier, the less complicated of the two types that we work with.
Now, besides now, when it comes to fixed annuities, so we have those the guaranteed multi-year ones. Those are very popular these days. But if you have someone that is, I mean, maybe they're approaching retirement. So maybe they're not even Medicare age yet. Maybe they're approaching retirement. They're taking a look to see what they could do. They've got their 401k and it's looking great, it's healthy, they're in a great position, but they've got some of this other money that's out there. They're like, you know what, I want to do something with this. I don't necessarily want to lose it, but I want it to do better than like a 4% high yield savings account. Like, what would you recommend for someone that's looking to have maybe something a little bit more exciting?
So that's where the second type of annuity that we work with comes into play. So that's you'll hear them called fixed indexed annuities, or just indexed annuities for short. And the difference is going to be how that growth is credited. So while they do have different options you can choose from, and one of them is going to be a fixed account, you do have the option to choose and change that every year. And a lot of them have growth strategies that are going to be based on the S&P 500. So what that means is I take $100,000. I put this into a fixed indexed annuity. I choose up front, do I want this to grow at some stated rate of return, or do I want this to grow based on how some external index performs? If that index goes up for the next year at the 1 year mark, they're going to say, okay, S&P 500 did 15. Am I going to get that whole 15%? No.
No.
I'm going to get some portion of that, or that growth up to, say, some sort of cap. Because on the flip side is I put that same 100,000 in. I say I want this to grow similar to how the S&P 500 grows, and the S&P 500 goes down. What happens then? Do I lose? I don't lose anything. I stay flat. And that's kind of the concept, or the winning strategy with the fixed indexed annuities. You get a portion of the market gains, 0% of the market losses. So it's not so much how you make, it's how much you make, it's how much you don't lose in the years the market goes backward. And one of the statistics I used to talk about is, I want to say back in 1977, there was a pretty big pullback, and it took multiple years for the market to recover. In those times where the market takes multiple years to recover, you're not stuck waiting that many years in an indexed annuity to get gains again, or to be back to whole. You stay level. That's the value of the index annuity. And I know one of the things that Chris, you and I talked about before was I try to keep, I like to keep the indexed annuities simple. And there's a ton of different strategies that you can choose from on some of these. And it seems like one of the things that has happened over the last 8 or 10 years is a lot of these carriers have created their own, or worked with a third party to develop or implement a proprietary index crediting strategy. So instead of having it grow based on how the S&P 500 performs, maybe it grows how some sort of unique index that a company like Vanguard or Morgan Stanley or somebody tracks. In fact, one of the carriers that we work with has a NASDAQ 100 and Bitcoin trends index crediting strategy. At the end of the day, and I know, Chris, you'd ask me what my philosophy is. And I'll throw another question out to the chat here. How many mutual fund managers on average, say on a 20-year period of time, tend to outperform the S&P 500? It's some really, really small number. Exactly. It's
We
it's
got a
not
zero.
zero, but it's pretty close. Am I saying that it's impossible to beat the S&P 500 over time? I'm not, but I have to look at the track record, and it typically outperforms most mutual fund managers. And B, in terms of explaining something to your clients. Clients tend to be more comfortable with something they can understand and something they can see. They can pull up on on a computer. They can see how the S&P 500 is doing year to date or from a specific point in time. They understand it. They're comfortable with it. And I know someone in the chat mentioned there are some strategies out there that are uncapped. Trying to understand every single one of them, I think you're gonna kind of work your head into a frenzy. But you're right. There's just so many different crediting strategies out there on these indexed annuities. The important point is you've got a bit more upside potential than just a straight fixed annuity. You've got 0% of the downside risk if the market goes backwards. And these are the type of products typically that you can tie an income rider to. And we'll get to that at the end of the call because I want to give you a little study, kind of something that impacted me personally for one of the clients that I worked with, kind of tell you why some of these annuities can be so powerful for the clients that we work with.
Absolutely. So there's a ton of opportunity with annuities. We know that. We have with our Medicare agents across the country, these are the people that are in the best position to be having these conversation with their clients. But not every single client is going to be a good match when it comes to having that annuity conversation. So what would you, if you were to tell the group that's on the call today and anybody who's going to watch this in the future, who would be a good candidate to have an annuity conversation with?
So I think that's a really important point, Chris. And as we do additional training, the word suitability is going to come up. The product or the strategy has to be suitable, has to be appropriate for the client that we're working with. So annuities are not going to be right for everybody. Annuities are not going to be right for 100% of everybody's money because they are long-term instruments. They do have surrender schedules if you break into them early, much the way a CD does. You want to make sure that the person you're working with has enough liquid assets to cover their expenses in the event of an emergency. So someone who is very low income, who doesn't have much investable net worth, say someone comes to you and said, I've got $50,000 total to my name, you're going to be hard pressed to find a reason to put much, if any, of their nest egg into an annuity because heaven forbid, the example I always use down here is 4 years ago in September of 2022, we got hit with one of the biggest hurricanes in recorded history. And I know some folks, in many cases, it took a year or 2 years before their insurance company actually cut them a check for things like roof repairs. So I tell folks like, you know what? I need you to have at least, I'd say 50 to 75,000 or some amount of liquid assets as an emergency fund in case we get another big storm and it takes the insurance company a while to write you a check for repairs. That scenario could be something like hospital bills, medical bills, car breaks, and yeah, whatever that emergency is, you need to make sure that the people you're working with have assets available as an emergency fund to address those. So that's who I would tell you right off the bat is not a good fit for an annuity. Someone who doesn't have that or someone who's literally just kind of operating paycheck to paycheck. So your ideal clients are going to have some amount of assets in savings, money market, something to cover those emergencies, and then other assets that you can look at putting into. And I would not recommend using the phrase annuity with them, especially in a fact finder. One of the phrases I've seen multiple agents and in groups use is principal protection solutions. We see a lot of times the word annuity for someone who has never talked about it or doesn't understand it just has a bit of a bad connotation. So we're not talking about product, we're talking about solutions.
Yeah, I've seen it. I've seen it described too. So when you're going through and you're doing a fact finding and you're talking to clients like, oh, here's all the services that I offer. You offer health insurance so we can insure your health in case something happens to you. We get you to the right doctors to get the right treatments to get better. We can insure your life so we can get you life insurance when you pass away. You can leave a death benefit to a loved one or a charitable organization, whatever you want to do. We also insure your income.
Mhm.
And that's where the annuity conversation is we're insuring your income. We can also help ensure that you don't outlive your savings, you don't outlive your investments, and you can feel financially stable as you go through retirement. Because we're finding out a lot with Social Security. A recent study just came out. It's something like 19% of Social Security recipients, that's 100% of their income. It's 35% of individuals, Social Security is 90% of their income. So there's a lot of people that are living that paycheck to paycheck and they don't have a lot of other avenues to generate income until you start having a conversation with them. And like Henry was talking about, find the people that have that emergency fund that's set up there, and then talk to them about everything else that's going on in their life, because you may be able to get a situation where from outside looking in, the client doesn't look like they'd be a great annuity person, but when you start asking those questions and you find out that they've got liquid assets, they've got a great emergency fund, but they've also got this sitting over here or this sitting over here, and they're concerned about outliving their income, those are the people you have that conversation with.
So I did see a question come into the chat about a carrier. I want to try to avoid having conversations on this call about specific carriers. I do want to keep it to kind of the general concept. We are going to have a recording available. Chris, if you don't mind, I know we're getting close to the half hour mark. I got a couple
Mhm.
more points to make. One of the things you're going to see on most annuity applications is going to ask about risk tolerance. How aggressive are you on your investment philosophy? If someone says, I am absolutely looking to hit it out of the park, I am willing to do options trading, real estate investment trusts, and all of the type of investment strategies that you may see out there for someone who's looking for a higher return and willing to take that risk of loss. You're not necessarily going to see them be a fit for fixed or fixed index products. They are looking for someone who's conservative to even moderately conservative. But something to bear in mind is, Chris, you and I are roughly the same age. I'm not going to necessarily betray our age. So we were during 2001 and maybe even 2008. We were fairly young when those events happened. So we may have not been personally as significantly impacted as some of our folks that we're talking to as far as T65 clients. But I'll tell you what, our parents were. So
Oh,
you're
yeah.
going to see a lot of your clients, if they have children that are in their late 30s to even early and mid 40s, those children may have not lost money in 2000 and 2008, but they saw their parents take significant hits. What we're finding is, in many cases, millennial savers are much more conservative in their investing philosophy than their parents are. So even younger conservative savers are potential annuity prospects. And then the main client, like we mentioned earlier, are your pre-retirement folks. The folks that just, as they're approaching retirement, they don't have enough time to make up if there's a significant correction. One of the best lines that a client used on me, he was a retired pilot. He said, I just don't have as much runway left as I used to. And I think that's kind of a good way to look at it. You don't, as you're approaching retirement, you don't have enough time, or you don't have as much time to make up if the market kind of shifts shortly before you decide that you're going to stop working. So the last thing I want to do is I kind of want to give you a little bit of a case study, not so much a case study, a personal story, tell you about how someone I know and actually care about implicitly was impacted positively by one of these products. So I know some of you on the call know me fairly well. In April of 2024, my stepmother was diagnosed with lung cancer and it spread to her brain. And unfortunately, it was a very, very quick progression. One of the things that we tried to set up, because it was available on the particular Medicare plan that she was on, were home health visits from a nursing type agency. Just so happened that they lived far enough away from the main campus of the hospital system that also was the sponsor for that particular Advantage plan. As we see, there's a lot of regional carriers that are tied to a specific hospital system. She was far enough away that, yes, it was a benefit on the plan. Unfortunately, they were 2.5 hours away. They just literally could not facilitate somebody doing in-home visits to her every week. I set my father up with these particular portion of his portfolio in these type of products, these fixed index products that were paying a guaranteed monthly stipend. Some of these products out there, and we won't get into too deep into products, but some of these products, in the event that an individual is unable to perform 2 6 activities of daily living, they will increase how much they're paying. Sometimes it's double, sometimes it's more, sometimes it's less. In his case, it was an income doubler. So whatever he was getting on a monthly basis, it just doubled that. And that increased income was basically it helped us facilitate getting someone in the home once a week during that illness. So there are so many reasons why these products are relevant to what your clients are going through. I've seen them help people tremendously. Are they right for everybody? No. Are they right for 100% of somebody's money? No. But are they absolutely valuable when paired with the right client for the right reason? 100%. And like I said, the reason I shared that personal story is so you know that I'm not just talking about a product. I'm talking about something that I've seen in action and that I've helped my own family members with. So I personally believe in them.
Yeah, absolutely. They're it's an amazing product, and it is one that's met with a little bit of hesitation from really the agent community. And I think a lot of the hesitation comes from just simply not knowing. You know, there's a not knowing aspect of these annuity markets. We're on a phone call right now. We've got 60 Medicare professionals with us, and annuities is something new and it's something different. And I know there's a lot of interest just by the number of people who registered and joined us today. So what can our partners expect from us in regards to helping support their annuity sales, their annuity knowledge as we move on during this process?
Absolutely. So, in the next day or so, I fully intend to get it out tomorrow, but I do know I'm off site tomorrow. There is going to be a follow up email. I'm going to have some fact finder scripts, some introductory pieces that'll be helpful. I want you, if you're interested, when you get that email, respond to it. It'll come directly from me. Say, Henry, I want to know more. I will connect with you. We'll start with a couple carriers. I don't think people need to be contracted with 12 or 15 different annuity carriers, one or two for each specific need that we can help clients address. And we'll have additional training, things like this, some more in depth training. I want you to talk about it because I know you've got a lot of really cool stuff planned. And just know that one of the things that we want to include in there is going to be some additional trainings focused on annuities in a very, very granular, easy to understand type way.
Yeah, absolutely. So we're working on a full training software that's going to be available to our agents absolutely free. And it's going to allow you guys to go in there and really bone up on a lot of different pieces of knowledge that you think you might be missing. So whether that be in the Medicare space, whether that be in the annuity space, the life insurance space, the ancillary space with all these, short-term medical plans and short-term recovery care and things like that. And we're going to give you guys a platform where you can go on and you can learn the things that you need to know to help your business be successful. And it's not just going to be about products. It's also going to be about how to operate your business. So tips like, how do I get into community marketing? How do I, launch my social media advertisements and benefit from that? How do I structure my agency for succession? It's going to cover a lot of different things. So we're actively working on it right now to get things ready and going. And it's going to be an ongoing process. But a lot of the annuity trainings, when it comes to, what is those multi-year guarantee annuities? What is the fixed index annuities? What are these, crediting strategies? And what's the difference between, a point to point or a participation model? We're going to have everything in there. We're going to have how to go through a fact finder, how to, uncover the money from your clients and figure out what to do with them and determine suitability. So we've got a lot of great stuff coming down the pike to get you guys in this business because we don't think education should be a barrier to doing annuities. The only barrier to doing annuities should be whether or not you have enough time of the day to handle your clients. So that's what we're going to help you guys towards, and that's what we're focused on here. So stay tuned for more on that training and that system that we're going to be releasing to everybody soon. And hopefully it's going to benefit you guys a ton because we want to help you diversify your income. We want to help you take advantage of the opportunities that sit there. And annuities, like we've been saying the entire time, annuities is one of the great ways to do so.
So I did see a question in the chat about commissions. We tend to avoid talking about commission rates on here just because of the different organizational structures that some agents or agencies have. Certainly, when you get the follow-up email, if you've got commission questions on the commission rates, we can have those type of conversations. I did see one other question here, Chris, and it had to do with kind of the situation that my family went through, and it had to do with the taxation of those home health care benefits. So I hesitate to refer to them as long-term care benefits 'cause technically a payout from a long-term care policy typically is going to be non-taxed. The taxation on that benefit from an annuity is going to be based on the type of funds inside the annuity. So it's really just an acceleration of the income you're getting from the annuity. So if, say, for instance, it's income from an annuity that has an IRA in it, it's still going to be taxable. So it's not necessarily long-term care. It's just instead of getting $1,000 a month from your contract, it's now going to pay out 2,000.
Yep, absolutely. We had another question in here when it comes to comparing options. So I think that's going to be one of the biggest differences working with annuities compared to working with Medicare is there's generally not a ton of comparison. What happens is when you're talking to your clients, so you do a fact finder, you're talking to your clients, you talk about ensuring their income. and you bring up annuities and you get into the process. It's not, well, carrier A is better than carrier B or carrier C is better than carrier D. What you try to do from the get go is determine how much you're looking at as far as the asset transfer into the annuity, and then what's the purpose. And once you answer those questions, it really sums it down to, okay, do you want a multi-year guarantee plan? Are we looking at a fixed index plan? And then from there, you go with a company that you're comfortable with. And one of the things that we're going to be working on and providing to you through Henry is going to be the ability to lean on us for those situations. Who would be a great care? I have a client, they've got this amount of money, this is what they're looking to do with it. Who would you recommend? And then we make the recommendation, and then you make the recommendation to your client. So you're not really showing them a spreadsheet side by side. Once you have sold them the annuity, the idea of the annuity, it's all about, well, who would be a great carrier for this client? And then how do we get this? How do we get the application in, and how do we get it funded? And we're going to be able to provide support along the way.
Two things I'm going to piggyback off that, Chris. First, I did see another question that kind of dovetails with what we're talking about. Isn't carrier financial strength important? Absolutely, it
Mhm.
is. So I'm not going to come to you and I'm not going to recommend someone that we haven't looked into as far as what their AM best ratings are, and is someone that we don't feel comfortable with. So I wouldn't be concerned with that. But I think kind of going back to the comparison question, and this is going to be kind of something we have in a more of like an annuities 102 or a second type webinar. And that's going to be talking about the actual consultation process that you're going to have. And without going too deep into it, it is going to be a bit of a change in mindset than the typical Medicare appointment. Most Medicare appointments, you're making a recommendation and that decision is made typically at that appointment. Most annuities appointments and the annuities sales process, at the first appointment, you're just gathering information. You're not
Yes,
gonna recommendation, you're definitely not gonna quote that in front of the client. You'll say, "You know what? I'm gonna take this, I'm gonna do some research, I'm gonna come up with a potential solution, I'm gonna come up with an option, and then we'll have a second appointment." Trying to do that at the first appointment is not a pathway to success. I do see a question on what happens if a life insurance carrier, does go out of business. I think that's gonna get a little bit past the scope of what we have here. I can tell you that that's not something realistically that I'm too terribly concerned with, specifically because of the ratings on the companies that we work with. I do have a question. When is Annuities 201? I would say keep an eye on our website. We have not gotten that scheduled yet, but there will be more training coming down the pipeline.
yeah, definitely. But the nice thing is now, if you do have situations that you're dealing with or clients that you've had conversations with, and you want to just jump into it right away, I'm not going to tell everyone to just wait for the next annuity training to come
No,
out or to be available. This is something that you can learn as you go with the help of Henry. So if you
absolutely.
have a situation, you have somebody that's teed up, you're going to have that conversation, or maybe you've started that conversation, but you don't know where to go from here. That's when you get in touch with Henry. That's when you lean on him. He can guide you through that entire process and make it go smooth sailing for you. So don't wait for the opportunity until after these trainings come out. Jump on it as soon as you possibly can.
Absolutely. And one of the things that I think a lot of people are going to feel really good about is I know in the Medicare Advantage space, we see every carrier has their own kind of contracting process. I would say for almost all of the annuity carriers that we have, you work right through our Assurance Bay portal. So it's quick, easy, clean. I had somebody ask me for my email address. I'll tell you what, I'm going to put it right here in the chat. Gosh, that'd be embarrassing if I spelled my own email address wrong.
Henry needs some training, and it's only the spelling of his name.
Monahan at JSAonline.com. Again, in the next day or so, you'll be getting a follow up from me. It'll have the recording on this call today, as well as a couple other pieces for you. And just kind of recap, I'm extremely passionate about this product line. I'm passionate about helping you guys add this to your tool belt. And I look forward to working with each of you.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks everyone for joining us today. Thanks, Henry, for being on the call. Keep a lookout for your emails over the next few days for some more information, and take advantage of an opportunity. It's this annuities are fun to work with. It's one of those things that you have those conversations, you sell that first policy, and you instantly are looking for the next one. So whatever we can do to help you out, please lead on us here at JSA, and we appreciate your partnership, and we look forward to talking to you all soon.